The research center in Seoul stood silent, its gleaming white walls reflecting the early morning light. Dr. Kim Hara stared at the complex mathematical equations dancing across her holographic display, her fingers moving with practiced precision. She was different from other scientists. Where they saw limitations, she saw possibilities. Around her, colleagues whispered and shook their heads. Faster-than-light travel was a dream that had been dismissed by every scientific community across known space. Alien civilizations had long concluded it was mathematically impossible, a fantasy that belonged in children's storybooks. But Hara was not like other researchers. Her mind worked differently, seeing patterns where others saw chaos. She had spent years studying quantum mechanics, pushing boundaries that seemed unbreakable. Her team, a small group of brilliant minds, had been quietly working on something extraordinary. Park Jae-sung, her closest colleague, watched her with a mixture of admiration and concern. "The mathematical models are impossible," he muttered, reviewing the latest calculations. "No civilization has ever managed to break the fundamental laws of physics." Hera simply smiled. Her latest research suggested something radical, a method of manipulating space-time that didn't just bend the rules but potentially rewrote them entirely. Her calculations were precise, elegant, and completely unconventional. The research center was funded by a global consortium of scientific institutions, but most believed her work was nothing more than an interesting theoretical exercise. They saw her as a dreamer, someone chasing an impossible goal. What they didn't know was that Hera had discovered something unique. Her understanding of quantum entanglement went beyond traditional scientific thinking. She had noticed subtle patterns in quantum interactions that suggested a potential pathway through the seemingly impossible barrier of light-speed travel. Her team was small but exceptional. Lee Dongwoo, a quantum mechanics specialist with a reputation for innovative thinking. Kang Min-ki, an engineering genius who could transform theoretical concepts into practical designs. Each member brought something special to the project. The morning briefing was typical. Senior researchers listened politely, their expressions a mixture of patience and subtle mockery. They had heard her presentations before, brilliant mathematics that ultimately led nowhere. "The fundamental issue," Hara explained, her voice calm and steady, "is not that faster-than-light travel is impossible. The issue is that we've been approaching the problem from the wrong perspective." She demonstrated how traditional physics models created artificial barriers. By reimagining quantum interactions, she proposed a method of creating localized space-time distortions that could potentially bypass existing speed limitations. Her colleagues exchanged glances. Some looked intrigued, others seemed skeptical. But Hera was used to this. Throughout her career, she had consistently challenged established scientific paradigms. The research center itself was a marvel of modern technology. Located on the outskirts of Seoul, it represented humanity's most advanced scientific facility. Massive quantum computers hummed in climate-controlled rooms, processing billions of calculations every second. Hera's team worked tirelessly, often spending days without proper rest. They were driven by something more than professional ambition. They genuinely believed they could achieve the impossible. Alien observation networks had been monitoring human scientific research for decades. Most considered human technological development interesting but ultimately limited. They viewed humanity as a young, ambitious species with potential, but not one capable of truly revolutionary scientific breakthroughs. Little did they know that in this quiet research center, something extraordinary was taking shape, a theory that would challenge everything known about space, time, and the fundamental laws of physics. As the day progressed, Hara continued her work. Each calculation, each model brought her closer to something unprecedented. The equations were beginning to align in ways no one had ever seen before. Park Jae-sung watched her, a mix of excitement and apprehension growing in his chest. Something was different this time. The mathematics looked promising. "What if we're actually onto something?" he whispered, more to himself than to Hera. She looked up, her eyes bright with the kind of excitement that drives true scientific innovation. "We're not just onto something," she replied quietly. We're about to change everything. And in that moment, the impossible began to feel possible. The research team gathered around the holographic display, their breath collectively catching, as new data streams began to reveal something unprecedented. Lee Dongwoo, the quantum mechanics specialist, had been working nonstop for 3 days, surviving on instant coffee and determination. His latest calculations were unlike anything the scientific community had ever seen. Traditional models of spacetime suggested absolute limitations on faster-than-light travel. But Dongwoo's work was different. He had discovered a unique quantum interaction that suggested a potential pathway through these seemingly unbreakable barriers. The team's research center buzzed with quiet excitement. Computer screens flickered with complex mathematical equations that danced and transformed, revealing patterns that challenged everything known about physics. Each new simulation brought them closer to something revolutionary. Dr. Kim Hara studied the data, her fingers tracing the holographic projections. She understood immediately what her colleague had discovered. It wasn't just a small breakthrough. It was a fundamental reimagining of how quantum mechanics could interact with spacetime. Alien scientific networks, constantly monitoring human technological development, began to take notice. Their initial scans showed something unusual happening in the small research facility in Seoul. The patterns were different, more complex than anything they had seen from human scientists before. Dongwoo explained his discovery to the team. "We've been thinking about spacetime as a fixed construct," he said, his voice filled with excitement. "But what if it's more flexible? What if we can create localized quantum fields that essentially fold space instead of trying to move through?" The implications were massive. Traditional faster-than-light travel theories always assume direct movement. Dongwoo's model suggested something entirely different, a method of quantum manipulation that could potentially bypass speed limitations altogether. Park Jae-sung, typically the most skeptical team member, found himself genuinely impressed. The mathematics were elegant, almost beautiful in their simplicity. Each calculation seemed to unlock another layer of understanding. Outside the research center, the world continued its normal routine. People walked streets, worked jobs, lived their lives, completely unaware that a small team of scientists was potentially about to change everything humanity understood about space travel. The quantum computers processed massive amounts of data, generating millions of potential scenarios. Each simulation brought new insights, challenging previous assumptions about physics and space travel. Kang Min-ki, the team's engineering specialist, began translating the theoretical work into potential practical applications. His mind was already designing conceptual spacecraft components that could potentially utilize this new quantum understanding. What made their work truly remarkable was its approach. Unlike previous faster-than-light research, they weren't trying to overcome speed limitations. They were essentially creating a new way of moving through space entirely. The alien observation networks increased their monitoring. Something unusual was happening. The mathematical models emerging from this small human research facility were unlike anything in their extensive databases. Hours turned into days. The team worked with a combination of scientific discipline and creative imagination. They weren't just conducting research, they were reimagining the fundamental nature of space travel. Dongwoo's breakthrough suggested that spacetime wasn't a rigid construct but a flexible medium that could be manipulated under specific quantum conditions. Each new calculation brought them closer to something that seemed impossible just weeks before. The research center's temperature-controlled rooms hummed with energy. Quantum computers processed data at speeds that would have been unimaginable just a decade earlier. Every calculation brought them closer to a potential scientific revolution. Dr. Hara understood the significance of what was happening. This wasn't just another theoretical exercise. They were standing on the edge of something that could fundamentally change humanity's understanding of space travel. As night fell over Seoul, the team continued working. Cups of coffee grew cold, computer screens continued to flicker, and the promise of something extraordinary hung in the air. They were close, very close. The impossible was about to become possible, and the universe was about to change forever. The spacecraft took shape in a hidden orbital facility. unlike anything humanity had ever constructed before. Kang Min-ki walked around the massive structure, his trained engineer's eye catching every minute detail of its design. This wasn't just a vessel, it was humanity's boldest statement to the universe. They called it the Quantum Horizon, a name that represented both hope and challenge. Its exterior looked deceptively simple, with smooth metallic surfaces that concealed incredibly complex quantum technologies. Most of the ship's systems were designed to manipulate space-time in ways no previous spacecraft had ever attempted. Funding had been a massive challenge. When the team first presented their research, most scientific institutions laughed. Government agencies were skeptical, but a few visionary investors saw the potential. They understood that this wasn't just another scientific experiment. This was a potential leap for human civilization. Min-ki's engineering team worked around the clock. Each component was tested beyond standard parameters. They weren't just building a spacecraft, they were constructing a machine that could potentially rewrite the rules of physics. The quantum drive was the most complex part. Developed from Li Dongwu's theoretical breakthrough, it looked more like an intricate piece of art than a mechanical system. Delicate quantum entanglement circuits were carefully integrated, each connection representing years of research and countless failed experiments. Global scientific networks monitored the project quietly. Alien observation stations picked up fragmented signals, trying to understand what the humans were attempting. Most believed it was another futile human endeavor, a demonstration of technological ambition without real scientific substance. Dr. Kim Hara oversaw every stage of the prototype's development. Her attention to detail was legendary. Where other scientists might overlook small inconsistencies, she saw potential problems that could compromise the entire mission. The facility itself was a marvel of modern engineering. Located in a classified, orbital platform, it represented the pinnacle of human technological achievement. Massive radiation shields, advanced cooling systems, and quantum stabilization chambers surrounded the quantum horizon. Park Jae-sung managed the complex computational models. His team ran thousands of simulations testing every possible scenario. They weren't just preparing for success, they were planning for every potential failure. Weeks turned into months. The prototype slowly transformed from theoretical designs to a tangible machine. Each system was meticulously crafted, each component tested beyond standard expectations. The level of precision was extraordinary. The quantum drive's initial tests were promising. Small-scale experiments showed unprecedented stability and quantum field generation. Where previous attempts had failed, their design showed remarkable consistency. Alien scientific communities began to take notice. The mathematical models emerging from the human research were unlike anything in their databases. What seemed like a long shot was beginning to look like a genuine breakthrough. Min-ki understood the weight of their work. This wasn't just about building a spacecraft. They were challenging fundamental assumptions about space travel. Every calculation, every design choice represented humanity's most ambitious scientific attempt. The team worked with a combination of scientific discipline and creative imagination. They weren't just following established protocols, they were creating new ones. Each challenge was an opportunity to innovate. Radiation shielding, quantum field generators, advanced life support systems. Every component was designed with multiple redundancies. They were preparing for a mission that could potentially change everything humanity understood about space travel. As the prototype neared completion, a sense of excitement filled the facility. Scientists and engineers exchanged knowing glances. They were part of something extraordinary, a moment that might define human scientific achievement for generations. The quantum horizon wasn't just a spacecraft, it was a symbol of human potential, a machine that represented humanity's ability to dream beyond known limitations, to challenge what others considered impossible. Min-ki ran his hand along the spacecraft's smooth exterior. Years of work, countless sleepless nights, and unprecedented scientific innovation had led to this moment. They were ready. The impossible was about to become possible. The control room was silent. tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Dr. Kimhara sat in the pilot's seat, her hands steady on the quantum navigation controls. Years of research, countless calculations, and human determination had led to this moment. Outside, the massive orbital platform was a hub of controlled chaos. Technicians monitored countless systems, their fingers hovering over emergency shutdown protocols. No one knew exactly what would happen when the quantum horizon initiated its experimental drive. Park Jae-sung's voice crackled through the communication system. All systems are green. Quantum field generators are at maximum stability. His words were calm, but a slight tremor betrayed his underlying excitement. Hera took a deep breath. She wasn't just piloting a spacecraft. She was about to attempt something that every scientific civilization had declared impossible. Faster-than-light travel wasn't just a dream anymore. It was about to become reality. The alien observation networks were watching. Thousands of monitoring stations across multiple star systems tracked the human vessel's preparations. Most believed this would be another failed human experiment, a demonstration of technological ambition without scientific substance. Quantum field generators began to hum. The quantum horizon's exterior seemed to shimmer, reality itself bending around the spacecraft's intricate design. Something extraordinary was happening. Space itself was preparing to be manipulated in ways never before attempted. Initiating quantum field generation, Hara announced. Her voice was steady, professional. Years of training and preparation had led to this single moment. The first signs of something unusual began to appear. Quantum entanglement circuits started generating a field unlike anything previously observed. Space around the quantum horizon began to twist, bend, and fold in ways that defied traditional understanding of physics. Lee Dongwoo watched the data streams, his eyes wide with excitement. The mathematical models were working. Every calculation, every theoretical concept was transforming into something real and tangible. Alien monitoring stations began to report unusual readings. The human vessel was doing something impossible, creating localized space-time distortions that challenged everything known about interstellar travel. Inside the spacecraft, Hera felt a strange sensation. Reality seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. The quantum drive was working, creating a field that essentially folded space rather than moving through it traditionally. Kang Min Ki's engineering systems performed flawlessly. Quantum stabilization mechanisms kept the spacecraft intact, preventing the massive energies from tearing the vessel apart. It was a delicate dance of advanced technology and precise mathematical calculations. The control room watched in stunned silence. Holographic displays showed the quantum horizon generating a quantum field that essentially created a bubble of modified spacetime. Traditional speed limitations were being rewritten in real time. Seconds felt like hours. Then hours felt like seconds. The spacecraft was moving, but not in any way previously understood. It wasn't traveling through space. It was fundamentally changing how space itself behaved. Alien observation networks began to panic. The human vessel was generating quantum interactions that their most advanced scientific models couldn't explain. What seemed like a long shot was becoming a revolutionary breakthrough. Hera's voice remained calm. Quantum field stable. Navigation systems functioning within expected parameters. Each word was carefully chosen, representing years of scientific discipline. The universe seemed to hold its breath. A small human spacecraft was challenging fundamental assumptions about space travel, about the very nature of physical reality. As the quantum horizon continued its maiden voyage, something extraordinary happened. The impossible was becoming possible. Humanity was about to prove that limitations were nothing more than challenges waiting to be overcome. In that moment, everything changed. Space, time, and human potential transformed before the eyes of an astonished universe. The maiden voyage of the quantum horizon was more than a scientific mission. It was a declaration of human potential, a statement that no barrier was truly unbreakable, and the universe would never be the same again. When the quantum horizon returned, Silence fell across every scientific network in known space. The small, human spacecraft had done something impossible. It had traveled faster than light and returned intact. Alien civilizations watched in stunned disbelief. Their most advanced scientific councils gathered emergency meetings, reviewing the unprecedented data streams. Humanity had just challenged everything they understood about physics and space travel. Dr. Kim Hara's first press conference was broadcast globally. Her calm explanation of the quantum field manipulation technology sent shockwaves through scientific communities. She didn't boast or dramatize. She simply presented the facts. "We didn't overcome the speed of light," she explained. "We found a way to fold space itself." The implications were massive. Traditional interstellar travel models became obsolete overnight. Alien civilizations that had spent millennia developing space travel technologies suddenly found themselves technologically outpaced by humans. Li Dongwu's mathematical models were quickly shared across global research networks. Scientists from every corner of Earth studied the breakthrough, understanding that this was more than a scientific achievement. It was a fundamental reimagining of space travel. Diplomatic channels erupted with requests. Advanced alien civilizations that had previously viewed humans as a young, primitive species now sought collaboration. They wanted to understand how this breakthrough was possible. The quantum drive technology represented more than a scientific achievement. It was a statement about human potential, about the ability to challenge fundamental limitations. Kang Min Ki's engineering team began developing improved designs. Each new iteration of the quantum drive became more stable, more efficient. What seemed like a miracle was quickly becoming repeatable technology. Global economic systems shifted. Space exploration companies recognized that everything had changed. Interstellar travel was no longer a distant dream. It was becoming a practical reality. Alien observation networks that had monitored human development for centuries were forced to reassess their understanding. Humanity was not just another developing species. They were potential equals, perhaps even technological superiors. Park Jae-sung worked on refining the theoretical models. Each new calculation expanded their understanding of quantum field manipulation. They weren't just developing a technology. They were creating an entirely new scientific discipline. The first commercial quantum drive prototypes began development. Space agencies from multiple countries competed to integrate the new technology. What was once a theoretical concept was becoming a practical tool. Governments worldwide recognized the geopolitical implications. Space was no longer a distant frontier, it was becoming an accessible destination. National space programs received unprecedented funding and support. Alien diplomatic missions began arriving on Earth. They wanted to understand, to collaborate, to learn how humans had achieved what was considered impossible. The power dynamics of galactic civilization were shifting. Research facilities around the world expanded their quantum physics departments. Young scientists saw unprecedented opportunities. The field of quantum mechanics was no longer a theoretical pursuit. It was a pathway to revolutionary discoveries. Economic projections suggested that the quantum drive technology could potentially solve multiple global challenges. Resource limitations, energy production, transportation, everything was about to change. The quantum horizon became more than a spacecraft. It was a symbol of human potential, a demonstration that no barrier was truly unbreakable. Scientific limitations were simply challenges waiting to be overcome. Alien scientific councils struggled to adapt. Their most advanced theoretical models had been rendered obsolete by a small team of human researchers. Humanity had done what no civilization had managed in thousands of years of space exploration. Dr. Hara understood the weight of their achievement. This wasn't just a technological breakthrough. It was a moment that would define human potential for generations. As news spread, people around the world celebrated. A species that had been confined to a single planet was now preparing to explore the universe. Limitations were nothing more than temporary obstacles. The universe had changed, and humanity was ready to explore it.